everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you all the series that I'm currently in the middle of. So I basically wanted to make this list for myself because we are slowly but surely creeping towards the last month of the year, December. And in December I want to finish or make progress in as many series as possible to try to start 2022 a little bit with a clean slate, you could say. I know that I won't be able to finish all of these series, but at least I can make progress. So in order to know which books I could put on my December TBR, I decided to make this list, and then I thought, why not share with all of you? Because the last time that I did an ongoing series video, I think was in the beginning of this year, so it's almost a year ago. And I think that this timing is also perfect because in December I will be making a lot of 2022 TBRs, so series that I want to start, standalones that I want to give a try, so that you have an idea of the type of content that you can expect in 2022. But of course, these series, some of them I've started in 2020, are at the top of my priority to actually finish next year. So that way you also know the series that are currently ongoing that I will also be reading next year. Now, I have made one criteria quite clear to myself, and that is to only add and talk about the series that I can make progress in. So there are a couple of series that I have read all of the published works. So yes, these are ongoing, but I can't make progress even if I wanted to. So those are not going to be on the list. These are series that I can make progress in. There are more published works than the ones that I've read up to this date. And if we take that criteria into account, I have 13 series to talk about. So without further ado, let's just get into the list. And the first series on the list is the Poison War novels by Sam Hawke. So the second book, Hollow Empire, is still on my TBR, and if I'm not mistaken, this is going to stay a duology. So if I read this in December, I will have finished the series, and I'm definitely going to try that. The first book, City of Lies, I read a while ago in the beginning of this year, so I don't really remember too much, but I still remember that we were following a brother and sister duo and that the brother was the proofer of the counselor, so he had to test food to see if there was poison in it. There was also a kind of mystery because the city was under siege, but they didn't really know who was responsible, and there was a traitor in the middle of the city. So that one had a little bit of an ending, and I do think that this one will follow the same characters, but we will again get a little bit of a standalone story, which is something that I quite enjoy, but I definitely want to pick it up before I forget too much of the first book. Next up, I have a series that if you're not familiar with BookTube in general, I don't think that you will have heard of this one, but if you follow some booktubers and especially fantasy booktubers, you will have heard of this series. It was quite the big splash in 2021, and that is the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. So The Bitter Twins is the second book in the trilogy, and this one is the next one on my TBR. So I've read The Nine Train, the first book in the trilogy, in 2020, and it was actually one of my favorite books of 2020, so I don't really know why I haven't picked up the second one yet. And I really need to get to it soon because I'm starting to forget some quite important stuff, I think, from the first one. All I know is that we follow three characters, and I liked all three. You had an explorer, you had a witch, and you had a Geralt-type character who was an elf. So I liked all of that, basically. And what I still remember is that this world was so unique. You basically had 8 reigns in the past, and reigns are wars, and why these are called reigns is something that you will find out in the first book. And now the people are afraid that the 9th reign is going to happen. These reigns are always fought against a foreign intruder, and the explorer is trying to find these artifacts and try to find out more information about these foreign intruders. I know that the end of the first book was quite epic, so I definitely need to get into the second one, and hopefully I still remember enough to just read it without having any problems. I know that for the last 2 series I said that I need to read the next one pretty soon before I start forgetting some important things, but if you compare that to the next series, these are nothing. And that is The Song of the Shattered Sands by Bradley P. Bolio. This is actually the only series that I'm afraid that I might have to reread the second one. So A Veil of Spears is the third one in the series. This is the next one on my TBR. And the first one, 12 Kings, was one of my favorite books of 2020. Then the second one, Blood Upon the Sands, I read in the beginning of 2021. And now it's been a while and I need to read the third one. And I'm actually a little bit afraid. I think that I will have some issues with remembering what happened. This is a dense world. It has a lot of political intrigue, which I love, but especially in the second one that ramped up. And I don't really remember anymore who is allied with who and who is pulling a trick on somebody and what's happening all of there. So if somebody has read the second book recently and might give me like a small recap of what's happening and tell me where all the pieces on the board are, that would be greatly appreciated because I am a little bit afraid of starting this one. And if it's necessary, I will probably skim read the second one because this series is amazing. It's a desert-based fantasy. You have gods, you have a lot of lore and a lot of history in this world. everything that I love, basically. And then all of the political intrigue. I need to continue with this book, and I think that I will put this on my TBR of December so that at least I have made progress and everything is still fresh in my mind for 2022. Then I need to finish Sarah J. Maas's ACOTAR series. So this is actually the second one. I have read the second one already, but I don't own the third one yet. And I think that I will just read it on my e-reader because it's not that I dislike the series, and it's fine for what it is. And while I'm reading it, I'm quite enjoying it. I'm having a great time. It's easy to read. It reads very fast. Great for when I'm in that mood. But afterwards, I don't think that I will ever pick this up again. And I do see that it has its issues and that the writing style isn't the best. So I don't really need to own this physically, I suppose is what I'm saying. And I will definitely finish the series because I still need to read one more book. And I know that I will have fun while reading it. But after that, I think that I am done with Sarah J. Maas for at least a while. Next up, a series that I'm not quite sure when or if I will continue, but I own all of them, so I will at least make the effort to see if I can read the next book and then make up my mind. And that is the Night Runner series by Lynn Llewellyn. So this is Shadow's Return. It's the fourth book in the series. And if I'm not mistaken, you have 7 books in the main series, and then you have a spin-off series, or a spin-off trilogy, I should say. I own all 10. So at the very least, I want to read this fourth one, because the third one I didn't enjoy at all. I think that was Trader's Moon. And I've heard from a lot of people that they didn't enjoy that one, but that this one is much better. So in this series, you follow a spy duo, Alec and Serigal, and these are also lovers. And I like the spying, but I think that the political intrigue that they tried to have in this series is pretty weak. And then the third book was only political intrigue, or almost only that, and I just wasn't invested at all. So I do hope that we get more Alec and Serigal moments in this fourth book, more spying and a little bit less political intrigue, or if we do have the political intrigue, that it's better than the previous installments. Then the series that prompted me to make this list in order to finish the series in December, and that is the Raven's Shadow trilogy by, of course, Anthony Ryan, one of my favorite authors, even though I've only read 2 books by him. So Bloodsong was one of my favorite books of 2020, again. And then I did a reread of Bloodsong this year, and I also read Tower Lord, which is the second book in the trilogy. This is the last one, Queen of Fire, and I wanted to read this one in August or September, but the schedule was just too packed and I didn't have time. However, I know that I'm going to love it. I loved Bloodsong. I think that Tower Lord was a very strong sequel. I don't think that it's as good, but Bloodsong was like 5 out of 5 stars. No thinking about it, like don't even question it. And then Tower Lord was maybe 4.5. So I do hope that this is going to be a good conclusion. And if anything, I just want to conclude it so that I can continue with Anthony Ryan's other works, his newer works that I've heard are even better than this trilogy. So this is one that I will read for sure in December. The next one is, again, a little bit shameful to admit, because that is the prologue of the Witcher series, Season of Storm. So this is the Dutch edition, by the way, but I will probably be reading this on my e-reader again in English, because at this point I haven't read Dutch for over a year, and I don't think that this will go well. So I am going to read it in English, and I've had it on my TBR for over a year. I've read the short stories and the main series in 2020. I've been saying that I'm going to read this one and it never happened. But again, this is one that I will probably read in December, just so I can pack up The Witcher and say that I finally finished this series. So I think that most people know what The Witcher is about and I don't really need to explain this. But this prologue was written 15 years after the main series and it goes back in time. And that's something that I'm always a little bit hesitant about because I have my ideas of the short stories of the main series. And to then go back in time and change some of the perceptions that I had, I don't know if I will like that. So this is one that I will try to read in December, and if I end up not liking it, I will just DNF it and keep my precious memories of The Witcher intact. Next up, I have a series on the list that is a little bit of a rule breaker, because in the beginning of this video I did say that I was only going to include series that have more books published than the ones that I've already read, and that's not true for this series, but the next installment is coming out in December, so it deserves to be on the list. And that is the Rook and Rose trilogy by M.A. Carrick. This is the first one, The Mask of Mirrors, and I am currently reading this one. I am this far in, so I will probably be finishing this one by the end of the week, and I'm really enjoying it, so I will definitely be continuing this series. This story takes place in a Venetian-type city, which is just amazing, and you are following a con artist who's trying to wiggle her way into a wealthy family, pretending to be their long-lost niece. This is a dense book. It's very difficult to follow at times because this con artist takes on different personas. You have a very rich history of this world. The magic system is not too easy to understand and it's not really explained. You're just watching it happen and trying to fit together all of the pieces and understand it. So it's definitely a little bit of a dense read. It takes me longer than I thought, but I'm loving everything that I'm reading so far. There are some unexpected twists and turns, which is something that I always enjoy, especially if it makes sense in a story, and it does. So yeah. One that I will definitely continue, and I do hope the third book gets announced soon so that the trilogy is complete. Next up, I have a series that I started quite recently, last month actually, and I loved the first installment, Blood of an Exile, that much that I am going to continue with the series as soon as possible. And that series is the Dragons of Terra trilogy by Brian Nesland. This is the second book in the trilogy, Sorcery of a Queen, and I hope to listen to that one in December because I have it on audiobook, so that's quite easy. In this book, you follow a dragon slayer who has been in exile for a long time. Things have happened in the first book that I can't really get into, and I want to know how this continues in the second one. I've heard that the second one suffers from middle book syndrome, but that the third one is amazing, so if I don't like this one, I just have to push through and finally read the third one and hopefully enjoy that one. It was a fun read, it was just very easy to get into. It had humor that was right up my alley, so I have high hopes for the second one, and these aren't that big. I think that all of them are under 500, closer to 400 pages, which is quite refreshing for fantasy. Now, I have two more fantasy series to talk about, and then I have two more sci-fi, so we are getting to the end of the list. These two series I am going to start this week. So I haven't started them yet, but for the sake of not having this video not age well, within a couple of days, I will include them as well. And that is the Dandelion Dynasty series. I thought that this was a trilogy, but then somebody in the comments told me that the fourth book is being announced. So I hope that it's going to be a quartet, another very long series. But the first book is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. And this is a buddy read that I have with Gregory over at Gregory LaPerche. We are going to read it in November. I am going to start today or tomorrow. And then we are going to have a spoiler-filled discussion on his channel next month. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I know that it is Asian inspired, and I think that there's an empire and a revolution. So I'm hoping a lot of political intrigue. As I haven't started it yet, I can't really say a lot, but by the time that you're watching this video, I have started it. So it counts, it should be on the list. The next series, I'm actually not quite sure if I'm in the middle or not, because if we're looking at the overarching series, The Realm of the Elderlings, then I'm quite in the middle because I just finished the Tawny Man trilogy, and I say just, I finished it in July. So I finished the first 9 books of a 16-book long series, but I need to start a new sub-series, you could say. And I am going to start the Rainwild Chronicles this Saturday, because over on Stacey's channel, we'll link it down below, we are going to have a 24-hour readathon, and everybody is just going to read the Robin Hobb book that they're currently at. So I am going to start this first one, Dragon Keeper. I'm going to listen to it on audiobook, and I have the English version on my e-reader. I'm not going to read again, this is the Dutch cover, and it's a beautiful cover, but it's been so long since I read Dutch that I'm not going to do that. But like I said, I am going to start this on Saturday, so it deserves to be on this list. So now I only have the sci-fi series left, and the first one is Dune by Frank Herbert. So I am committing myself to finish the original trilogy. I will not be reading the Sun's works because I've heard from a lot of people that those aren't that great, and I think that the original trilogy wraps a bow quite nicely around the story, if I can believe some sci-fi lovers that I know. So that's what I'm going to do. I know that a lot of people picked up Dune in 2021. I'm one of them because of the movie, and I know that a lot of people didn't like this and say that it was outdated. I'm not one of those people. I love Dune, so that's why I want to continue. But since this does read quite nicely as a standalone, I'm not really making a priority out of this series. I think that I can remember enough of the original book that I can jump into the second book whenever I want. I'm not going to forget some important things. So it's not high on my priority list, it's just something that's on the list because I enjoyed the book so much. And now finally the last series on the list, and that is the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. So I read the original trilogy this year, absolutely loved it. I didn't really like the first book, but the second and the third one were amazing. The second one is probably my favorite sci-fi book of all time at this point. And then I read Iron Gold, which is the first book of the second trilogy in this world. And I didn't like Iron Gold that much. To be honest, I thought that it wasn't a good book. But I've heard a lot of great things for Dark Age, which is the last book that is currently published, and we are waiting for the final book in the second trilogy. So I'm definitely going to read this one and then the final book in the trilogy. But if Pierce Brown writes anything more in this world, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up based on how much I disliked Iron Gold. If this book and then the conclusion of the trilogy is amazing, of course I will probably change my mind. But if it's like mediocre, like Iron Gold, I'm fine after finishing that second trilogy. So these are the series that I'm currently in the middle of and that I still want to finish. 13 isn't a too bad number for me. I can live with this, and especially because I do want to finish some of these series in December. Let me know how many series you're in the middle of in the comments down below and what you think of my list. Are there any series that you've already completed that were on the list, or maybe you've DNF'd one of those? Let me know in the comments. I do want to mention that this isn't to shame anyone. If you have 50 ongoing series and you're fine with that, you do you. I just get anxiety if my list is too long because I have some very dense series on the list, and if I let too much time pass, I just don't remember some important plot lines or plot points and I can't continue with the series, which is a shame if you love the previous works of that series. So that's why I try to keep this number low, but if you don't have that problem, then all the better for you, and I'm a little bit jealous. As always, I hope that you enjoyed the video and see you next time. Bye!